Hi, my name's Mel. I'm a midwife and I've been a midwife for a few too many years, probably about 8 or 9 years. In that time, I've worked in both the hospital setting and also the community setting. And recently, I've also moved into more of a postnatal community role and also as a lactation consultant. So yeah, it's been really rewarding. I'm also a mum of 2 and 1 on the way. So life's about to get very busy. As a midwife, I knew that breastfeeding and feeding my babies was something that was a huge priority to me. I've been lucky enough to breastfeed both of my babies so far for extended periods. So we've been through all the ups and downs of those experiences, everything from expressing milk and feeding in a bottle, to feeding in public, to breast refusal, to all of the things that come along with it as well. And it's something that I've always really loved, the breastfeeding experience. I think it's such a beautiful way to bond with my babies and connect with them and obviously give them all the nourishment that I can. As an experienced breastfeeding mother myself and a midwife and now lactation consultant, I've seen my fair share of feeding challenges. And I think these are applicable for both breastfeeding, mixed feeding and formula feeding by bottle mums. So the first thing I notice usually in the hospital environment, particularly depending on the type of birth you've had, is how you're actually supporting your body to help your baby to latch or to feed from the bottle. So, you know, you might have had a really difficult birth, uncomfortable birth. So sitting upright could be really uncomfortable for you. Having the ability to have a tool that can support your body as well as you to feed your baby is going to be invaluable for you. Particularly mums that have had a C-section as well. I find that those mums really do find breastfeeding difficult in those early days. Often in hospitals, you've got kind of those very flat or not very supportive pillows, and I find that they end up in a lot of really awkward positions. And after going on and doing my studies as a lactation consultant, we realize now that being able to bring your baby up to your breast or up to the height of where you're going to feed them is so important, as opposed to mums who end up really slouched over their baby, which results in a really poor latch, nipple damage, and obviously your shoulders are just going to feel absolutely wrecked if you're constantly straining yourself like that. I was so lucky to be introduced to this amazing tool, Feeding Friend, through gorgeous Amanda. And as soon as I was introduced to it, I thought it's just so fabulous. It's got the perfect shape that you can actually put it in any position. But the thing that I really loved was it was thinking about mums. When so often the focus can be on baby, we really need to think of our mums, because so often you see mums feeding and they're in a really slouched over position, or they look really uncomfortable, or they've got, issues holding the baby up with their wrist, particularly after difficult births and things like that. They're pretty exhausted. And their bodies really need a lot of love. And so having this kind of ergonomic support is so important for mums after birth. And I just loved the fact that this would slip into almost any position while I was supporting my baby to feed my baby, whether it be breastfeeding or whether it be bottle feeding. I even actually used my Feeding Friend laying down at the park on a picnic rug once, and that was honestly my favorite use, because side-lying feeding is one of my favorite positions, and it's such a great position for mum and baby so that their bodies are in a straight line. But then when you think it's really hard to do it outside of the house, how do you lay down to feed in public? And so one day I took my picnic rug, I took my Feeding Friend, and we went and laid in the park, and I was laying down feeding and using this as a pillow for myself while feeding baby, and it was just amazing. I felt like I'd really hit the mum lottery. A lot of people try to feed their babies and they end up kind of hunched over their babies with their shoulders right up here and in a very uncomfortable position, which is not good for anyone. What I encourage them to do is actually to drop their shoulders back using a tool such as the Feeding Friend to get their baby to the right height to breastfeed or to offer a bottle feed. I would actually highly recommend this feeding pillow to mums. Not so much to support baby, but more importantly to support you. because I think so often we think of baby when we're feeding, but we forget about ourselves. So often I come up to mums when they're feeding and we check position, and the first thing I do is tap their shoulders to remind them to drop those shoulders, to relax, to connect in with that experience. And I think having a tool like this that is portable, that you can fold up, that you can take with you, that you can feed in public, that you can feed while you're traveling, and knowing that you're always going to have that support for your body, because if you feel supported, baby's going to have a good latch and baby's going to feel supported. So if we can focus on getting you in a comfortable position and bringing baby up to the right height with the support under your arm or wherever else works, that's the most important thing. And not only for our breastfeeding mums, but also for my bottle feeding mums, we talk a lot about now pace feeding babies, and one of the most important things there is to make sure that the baby's actually in a more upright position. So what we can do is then slip this in right under the arm to ensure that that baby's in an upright position, which is going to help prevent things like reflux and overfeeding. So lots of important ways, but even the fact that you could take this into hospital with you on day one and get the feeding position right from day one and not rely on all those dodgy hospital pillows that don't give you any support.